With several games already based on the epic Lord of the Rings movie trilogy, you'd be forgiven if you thought video game tie-ins to the popular Tolkien novels were over. Well, think again. EA is back again with another title based on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. Unlike its hack-and-slash predecessors, though, the latest game, The Third Age, is a turn-based console-style role-playing game. Shutting the original cast of characters and their journey as it was laid out in the films and novels, The Third Age introduces a new cross-cultural group of travelers as they put their own stamp on the history of Middle-earth. While there are some rough edges, the result is a nice little role-playing jaunt into the world of Tolkien. As the game opens, you're introduced to Barethor, warrior of the land of Gondor. He's riding in search of the Gondorian heir Boromir, who has recently joined with the rest of the Fellowship of the Ring. The story of the Third Age revolves around Barethor, his past, and his fate in the world as he trails the Fellowship and gathers his own companions. These compatriots fall well within the archetypical spread of a Middle-earth adventure party. There's a wise and mysterious elf, a prideful dwarf who harbors suspicions about said elf, and a scruffy Dunedain ranger with his trusty bow, among others. Events unfold through scripted in-game cutscenes and a number of special events called scenes throughout the game. Scenes consist of clips from the Lord of the Rings films, narrated by Ian McKellen, who reprises his role as Gandalf here. Gandalf will explain to you what events are occurring in Middle-earth, what the various factions are planning, where your party is headed, and what your goals are. Interestingly enough, Gandalf will also fill you in on the details of your companions, what they're thinking, and even Barethor's past. In fact, there's so much exposition done that it seems to come at the expense of character interaction. For example, you're told that the dwarf Hadhod is bitter and cold-hearted because he lost his son to the caverns of Moria. But Hadhod himself never mentions this, he never alludes to any kind of loss, he doesn't seem particularly bitter or upset, and he has very little to say during the game other than the odd phrase when danger approaches. This is true of much of the game. You're explicitly told what has happened and what will happen instead of actually seeing it happen, and it serves to distance the player somewhat from the whole experience. Adventure mode is where you'll be exploring the various landscapes, caverns, fortresses, and villages of Middle-earth in search of your enemies or of your next objective. Upon entering a new area, you'll usually be assigned one or more quests for that particular region. Typically, quests are mandatory, but not always. You won't be gathering any currency in the Third Age since there are no shops. Every piece of armor and every weapon you acquire will either be won through battle or discovered along your way. Since each piece of armor and weapon is distinct with its own unique appearance and stats, finding new equipment is always exciting. It's great to watch someone like Barethor go from a long-haired, ragamuffin, ratty old suit of armor to a shining suit of steel with a white tree of Gondor embossed on the front with a matching helm. Between monsters that drop loot and the many treasure chests hidden about, there's always a steady influx of new gear, which is a good thing because the battles in the Third Age will generally level you up quite quickly. Engaging in battle involves an interesting mix of set encounters, random encounters, and visible enemies you can run up to and engage. There are two different on-screen indications that let you know if a battle is imminent. The first is Sauron's glowing red eye. When you cross certain areas or revisited places you've been before, the eye will start to form in a corner of your screen. If you don't leave that particular village, cave, or field, the eye will gradually get brighter and brighter until it finally triggers a battle. The other indicator is a glowing blue orb, or a palantir. The palantir will appear in areas where the enemies are lurking in a set location. As you approach that location, the palantir will get brighter and more distinct. You can use that as a warning that if you need to rest your characters or heal them because they aren't ready for a fight. Visible monsters are also scattered around, like ambushing goblins in the battles of Moria or battle trolls fighting the guard in the streets of Minas Tirith, so you can just run into them and start a fight. Well, this sounds pretty varied, and it is. What really ends up happening is that you're basically just going to be fighting something just about all the time. And anyone who's played a turn-based RPG in recent or distant history should pick up the fighting very easily. In addition to their normal attacks, your party members have access to two different sets of skills. One set is usually based on the weapon that character uses, like sword skills, spear skills, axes, and the like. And the other set is usually magical in nature. You'll level your abilities up by using them. Each time you use an ability from a particular tree, you'll get a point in that tree. Earning the best abilities takes quite a bit of time, as you only get one skill point per use of a skill, and you'll need to focus hundreds of points in some trees. When you level your characters up, you'll be able to allot points to different base stats, like strength, speed, dexterity, spirit, and so on, so you can customize in a few different levels. The system works well on the whole, though investing in abilities gets to be time-consuming, especially at higher levels. The special powers, at least generally, look really great, with lots of shining swords held aloft and dramatic creaking of bowstrings, but there's only so much variation in them. You're going to be seeing some of them hundreds and hundreds of times as you patiently raise your points in increments of one. The bulk of the powers are fairly short, but there's no way to skip the special effects show manually. In addition, some of the effects seem to act oddly. For example, it's possible for an enemy to register as immune to a stun, but if you use a stunning skill, the enemy can appear stunned, drop off the list of action portraits as if they are stunned, and then still be able to move normally, which is a little weird. Also, some of the enemies have special abilities that will slow your turn or decrease your attack strength, but there are no icons on screen to show you this, so sometimes you'll be left guessing about exactly what an enemy curse just did to you. When you complete a chapter of the game, you unlock Evil Mode for the chapter that you just cleared. Well, this sounds pretty interesting. Evil Mode is actually just a selection of battles from that chapter, generally around 5 or less, that you'll fight from the side of the Mordor forces. Usually very quick to go through. You'll be plunged right into a battle upon a victory, and you're not done until you've cleared all the fights. When this happens, you get a handful of items. Usually there's a nice weapon or two thrown in that will likely be better than what you had equipped. So breezing through this mode is usually worth the trouble. It's just not really all that interesting, unless you're fighting as the Balrog in Moria, because as we all know, huge fire demons are awesome. Even with all the skill raising, war queuing, and everything, the game takes about 25 hours to finish if you're breezing right through it, or 30 or a bit longer if you want to take your time and level up every skill you have available. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to get 100% quest completion on all the chapters, and there aren't any extra features unlocked when you beat the game. There is a co-op mode, but it's a bit poorly implemented. If somebody else plugs in a controller, that basically turns on the co-op mode, and then it's just basically player 1 controls some characters and player 2 controls some characters, and you trade off. As multiplayer in a turn-based game, it's just really not all that interesting. You're better off just leaning over your friend's shoulder and telling him or her which ability to use. Lord of the Rings, the Third Age molds Middle-earth into more traditional turn-based frames, and while the results couldn't necessarily be called great, the game carries some pretty good features, and it should appeal to fans of the source material.